Hello, it's me, Adam from Middle Age Gaming, and I am here with my friend Ben from high school. We've known each other for actually probably even before that, probably middle school, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
That's I'm trying to remember which year we did Odyssey of the Mind. What would that have been? Sixth grade, seventh grade?
Six and seven or seven and eight, but I know I still have both of the T-shirts downstairs.
I'm sure I probably have them somewhere too as well.
I have my Jake Riemann originals.
That's right. There you go. No, I still regularly game with Jake. We would normally game on Thursday mornings. So,
Oh wow, okay.
oh, sorry, that's Thursday morning for me. That's Wednesday evenings for you. So, but actually, that's going to get me into something I kind of wanted to talk about. Sorry, I'm adjusting my socks here. This is so unprofessional. Um, okay, so how did you get into gaming? What started you off there?
Wow. So I think probably my earliest memory of it. I'm sorry, my bird. Would really be. Um, I remember my older brother. He's 7 years older than me, and I don't know what age I was, but I was very young. And I remember him getting an NES.
Oh,
And
okay.
he had what was his first? I mean, obviously he had Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, obviously. But I think I remember the first real game being seen played through was probably Mario 2, and I was just like, "Holy crap, this is the coolest thing ever," And I had to have my own. I really had to have my own. But we didn't have a ton of money, I think it was a miracle that he got that. And I was taken to Sears and Roebuck for my birthday, and my dad offered to buy me one game, and I was like, "Oh, cool!" So I'm looking in the glass case, just the front box arts of
Yeah, yeah.
games. And the first game I ever bought, or ever had purchased for me, I should say, was a real stinker. I picked Mad Max, and I don't know why.
Oh, it's
Um,
Mad
it just
Max. I mean,
looked
come on.
cool. Yeah, it looked cool because had Mel Gibson on the cover with leather clad and a shotgun in his hand, and I said, "This is going to be the coolest game ever," and it sucked. It was so bad. It was so bad. Um, but really, that NES that my brother got that I would try to steal time on was just probably the earliest memory of video gaming that I can think of, and kind of cutting my teeth as my taste grew into RPGs and things like that. Cutting my teeth on like Dragon Warrior, which was incredibly hard for a child my age, or playing Shadowgate. If you ever had the pleasure to play Shadowgate, um, just incredibly hard games like you get on the NES, traditionally speaking,
Right.
uh, and just kind of moved on from there.
I remember when we were very little, we got the original Sega Genesis, and my brother and I would play all the way up to the first Robotnik fight, and it's really simple. I mean, there's just these two platforms, and you hit them, but we just couldn't beat it, and because we're really small, and eventually we were like, oh, you know what? I think this is an unbeatable enemy. I think we've actually beaten the game, and like it's literally the first boss, and we were so proud of ourselves. And then my dad came in one day, and he was just beat the boss, and it just blew our minds. Like there's just so much more out there that we can play in
It
this
really
thing.
expanded your worldview of what could happen in those games.
Yeah. Because I mean, yeah, prior to that, I would only played on like the Nintendo and maybe to a smaller extent the Super Nintendo. But I mean, Mario wasn't a super long game, and seeing all these
No,
things was, yeah. So for
what
us, it was,
eight worlds, I think.
yeah, super short. So for us, we were like, oh, did we beat it? Oh, okay, great, fantastic. My video is so dark today. Unfortunately, my light is running out of battery. So, oh well.
Well, I've got morning sun behind me,
Yeah.
surrounding me. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
it's 10:30 p.m. out here, so um, all right, but so
But
currently
yeah,
you're
that
hmm?
was huge to me. That was huge to me.
All right. So that was on the original Nintendo, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay. So now you're mostly on Xbox, yeah?
yeah. I've always been a console gamer, and actually, we can kind of come back and forth to it. After that NES, I've managed to finagle my own Super Nintendo, which is still the best system ever made, in my opinion. I mean, I still have my original half yellow Super Nintendo downstairs, and
Half yellow?
all the games with it. Yeah, so if you Google right now pictures of like Super Nintendos, a lot of the pictures you're going to see the gray plastic that makes up the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, yeah.
They're going to be half yellow. Either the bottom part of the shell is going to be yellow, or the top part. And it's not because they're dirty, surprisingly enough. And I learned this from my time working at FuncoLand and GameStop after high school. Uh, it was a plastic manufacturing issue that they had in pumping out Super Nintendos to North America, that they were using crappier plastic basically, and it yellowed over time. So you got this nice gray Xbox or Super Nintendo out of the box for Christmas one day, and then 2 years down the road, all of a sudden it's half. It looks like smokers blew their cigarette smoke into it for 2 years. And it just yellowed, the plastic yellowed. So it was just kind of an interesting little fact about that. But I got that Super Nintendo, and I mean, with a little thought, I could probably rattle off a dozen games that I consider, and this may sound dramatic, but I consider to be very formative in my video game career or life in general. In fact, I think I know my very first tattoo on my back was Mog from the box art of Final Fantasy 3 in the U.S. or Final Fantasy 6 in Japan.
Yeah, yeah.
So I actually have the Moogle from the box art as my very first tattoo because it meant that much to me. As weird as it is, but
Nah.
yes, I do play Xbox now.
No, I totally get that. Like, I think I touched on it a bit with Steve, but like, when we played back in the day, because he was the first person to introduce me to RPGs. I previously had been playing mostly platformers, right? Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, that sort of thing. He was the first person to introduce me into RPGs with Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6, depending on how you want to call it. And that was the first one. And then Secret of Mana. And then, when Final Fantasy 7 came out, I was all over that. And that just, from there I started like, I would get the magazines or get the strategy guides, and I would like try to copy the art style, and I would practice drawing in that style, and that was the whole thing. Yeah. And then Steve was like, one day he was like, well, we should make our own game with some of these characters. And then from there we wanted to go into game development, and that got me into why I wanted to learn computer science, and that's why I didn't get a job, and that's why I came to Taiwan. And it's like, so yeah, no, I totally get that whole like butterfly effect of it, leading from one thing to another. That totally makes sense to me.
Funny thing, you mentioned Steve. He actually, so I was already in love with Final Fantasy 3. It is my number one game. If you ask me today, my very favorite game, it's Final Fantasy 3 in America. I'm old habits, I guess. So Final Fantasy 3 to me. I could probably interchange my top five after that, but that will always be my number one. And Steve going over to his house was actually the very first time I had played Final Fantasy 2.
Oh yeah,
and I
technically Final Fantasy 4.
I'd never played Final Fantasy 1, and yes, exactly, technically Final Fantasy 4, but I played that for the first time at his house, and I loved it. I mean, almost just as much as 3, but it kind of blew my mind because I was so laser focused in loving 3, the world, the characters, the story, that I said, well, there can be no other Final Fantasy. This is it, and to have that experience, I was like, holy crap, there's more to this.
Yeah.
And like you said, yeah, led me into Final Fantasy 7, which I've got some funny stories about too, and generally playing a PlayStation 1 altogether. And it's just I don't know the word for it, but the momentum just exponentially increases, and here I am, 30 something, and still sitting on my couch as much as I possibly can and playing Xbox.
Yeah. No, that was, to me, that was a weird thing too, was playing Final Fantasy, back then it was Final Fantasy 3, and every other game prior to that, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, same characters. Mario 1, Mario 2, same characters. Super Metroid, it's always Samus, right? And then in Final Fantasy, it's like, Final Fantasy 3, I'm not going to know what's going into this. And then it's like, no, you don't have to play the other games. They're completely unrelated. And that was just kind of, to me, like, what? No, that doesn't make any sense. This is Final Fantasy 3, like, this is the third one. But yeah.
And I'll just, since we're talking about Final Fantasy, I have to say, one, I don't travel often. I'm a homebody,
Me too. Strangely enough.
Not to mention, I'm probably pretty socially awkward anyway. I can talk into this camera just fine, but I hate to be in front of a group of people. But I really wanted to go to Universal Japan when they had their Final Fantasy exhibit.
Oh yeah.
I was so annoyed that I couldn't go. Like I want to go now to the Mario world that they have that they're opening, I guess, this spring. But I guess with COVID, that's probably a terrible idea as well. But just I'm still a big kid, that stuff still really excites me.
Korea says I'm not a homebody. You ask my wife; she'll tell you I'm definitely 100% a homebody. I just try to keep the peace, and that's why I'll get out of the house is to keep her happy.
Give Haley a peace and quiet.
Huh? Yeah,
Give
just to
Haley a
keep
little
the
peace and
peace and
quiet.
keep the wife happy. So
Yeah.
I've been making an effort to get out of the house more. But yeah, hey cat. So, hey,
But yeah, I actually I got into PC gaming a while, like a good long while ago. You know, back when. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll say this. Talking about Steve again. Hopefully he listens to this and
he's the
gets a
center of our universe.
well. It's how I met you,
No,
frankly.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. We placed a golden eye in his basement all the time.
GoldenEye, holy crap, GoldenEye. But I'm gonna tell you another big one, Adam. That guy got me so hooked in Ultima Online on his
Oh
PC
no,
estate.
that game was great. It was so
Holy
messed
crap!
up.
Ultima Online is the reason that I started working at like 13 in my family's deli here in the county, uh, in a convenience store, so I could save up money. I bought an Intel Celeron 333, and it could barely run Ultima Online, but that's all I wanted to do. That's the reason I got 56K in my mom and dad's house. It's the reason that I would take all the phones and hoard them so they couldn't pick them up. And Virginian twang, come on.
I don't know. He keeps telling me I have a Virginian accent, and I'm like, I don't know what that sounds like, but
Everybody blames me for talking too fast, so if I ramble on, you'll just have to slow me down.
no, it's
But
okay. I talk fast too.
but yeah, no, Steve, man, Steve, you got me on Ultima Online, and that was actually my first foray into any MMO ever. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world that I could talk to people that I was playing with, and ultimately winding up playing WoW for so many years, and WoW is kind of actually how I connected with my wife.
Okay.
Not necessarily, we didn't necessarily meet in WoW. We met outside, but come to find out she was playing as well. And by the time she had moved in, we had our back office set up with two desks, not back to back, but kind of 90 degrees to each other, playing with one another and just talking to ourselves or on a headset with the guild or something like
Yeah,
that.
LAN parties.
And exactly, and it kind of took off. But I will always look back to Ultima Online, and actually sometimes I'll still pop up like Twitch channels or YouTube channels of gamers playing Ultima Online just for them feels.
Wait, it's still alive? It's still up?
Yeah, there are servers still up
I'm
actually.
actually very surprised about that.
There are servers still up for it. I think they're I don't know if they're heavily modded or if they're like old vanilla servers. Hell, for that matter, I
Probably
guess I don't
modded.
even know if they're still run by Origin. Maybe they're private servers. I don't know.
That would be my guess. Is they're probably bleh, probably private
Legacy.
servers. Yeah, because I thought I heard somewhere that they actually shut that down a while ago. But yeah, private servers would make the most sense.
Yeah,
Ah.
just to feel them feels again, man.
All right. So you have a Xbox One. You no, not One X. Xbox X series, right?
I do actually. I came from the One X, and I got the Series X. Yes.
How did you manage that? I know that I've heard lots of people saying that, because you had the Xbox One, Xbox One X, Xbox Series X, Xbox One S, Xbox Series S. It's just
Yeah, they're so bad. How did I manage that? A
because demand's
combination
hard.
of I guess Christmas Miracle and spamming the Target app.
Oh, fantastic.
The Target app was the way to go. I found.
Oh, okay. Now I've heard
Yeah,
some people saying that Xbox is actually a little bit easier to get than the PS5. Do you think that's actually true, or?
I've been reading that actually, probably just as recently as last night. I've been reading the same thing. I don't agree, frankly. I feel like it's fanboys, that are
Ah,
pushing that. Uh, I I like the Xbox. I don't. I'm not an Xbox fanboy, in my opinion, at least. But if you had a multi-platform release, I'm gonna buy it on Xbox. And this may be a topic for another day, but uh, I like achievements. I'm a little bit of an achievement whore. It feels
okay,
good. I've amassed them through my Xbox Live profile since the OG Xbox,
okay.
and I don't want to give it up now. So if it's a multi-platform release, I'm just gonna buy it on Xbox because it's convenient for me. However, I own a PS4. I actually was. Uh, that's a funny story too. Again, but how I came into possession of that. Um, but I said, well, heck, I've got it. I'll just play the stuff I really want to play on it, and it's been my Uncharted, my Horizon Zero Dawn, and my Final Fantasy VII Remake machine. It's pretty much all I've played on it.
So just the
Oh, and
exclusives.
Kingdom Hearts.
Ah, I haven't played Kingdom Hearts since 2. It's been
I
so
played
long.
I played the first one on PlayStation 2,
Yeah.
and then I decided I wanted to play them all in that Kingdom Hearts collection that they released for
Yeah.
PlayStation, and then ultimately I went back over to Xbox for the final Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking about getting the collection, and then I was just like, oh man, this is going to be such a time sink. I don't know if I have time for all of them. I could start with
Yeah,
3, but then yeah, you have like, was it the 108 days or whatever, and the chain of memories,
uh,
and
yeah, no. I don't understand what's going on with the titles of that either, or the story for that matter. And I think I actually told you and Korean before. I love I love getting achievements. I love getting all the missions done in a game. I consider myself to be a completionist and looking for the Easter eggs, secret stuff, and things like that. But I skip a lot of story. I skip a lot of story in a lot of games. I mostly don't know what's going on in Cyberpunk, and I'm right at my 98th hour, I think. Witcher was a blur, but I sure loved hacking people to pieces. That was a blast, you know. Um, Final Fantasy, of course, my exception. I know what's happening in those because I enjoy the story, but
right.
I just skip.
Okay. So would you say your brand loyalty to Xbox is primarily because of the achievements, and you're just kind of already invested in the ecosystem and that sort of reasoning, or?
Yeah, I think mostly so. And my brother has Xbox as well. So
Okay.
really, if I wanted to play a co-op, which I prefer co-op over anything else, but if I wanted to play a co-op, he's there. I've got my friends that I know that are there, and it's convenient, I guess at this point.
Yeah, no,
I think
I know a lot of people will say, you know, pick wherever your friends are, that's where you should go.
yeah,
If
and
your
that's
friends are on
how
PlayStation, go PlayStation. If
how
your
I feel.
friends are on Xbox, go Xbox. I was
And
kind of in
I
the.
mean,
No, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say Xbox kind of started for me again back when I started working at GameStop. Or it was FuncoLand when I started there and got bought out by GameStop. But I worked there pre-release of the OG Xbox, and when the Microsoft reps came around as employees, we got invited to something called the Xbox Experience. It was their promo event for it, and they actually gave us tickets to go up north. I think it was Arlington or
Some red light.
Alexandria or something like that, to a big to a big vendor event, basically where they showed off the Xbox. And I said, I'm sold. This is super cool, and I just stuck with it from there.
Okay. Yeah, I know most of our friends had Xboxes. Jake had an Xbox. Steve did not have an Xbox. Steve had a GameCube. So Steve had GameCube and the PS2. I had a PS2. Jake had PS2 and Xbox. But then I remember when I came to Taiwan, most of the people that I knew back in the States were on Xbox, but it's actually harder to get Xboxes over here because, in Asia, it's easier to get the PlayStation. So because of that, then I ended up getting the PS3. And then once I had the PlayStation Network thing, and you have all the I have all my games on there and stuff like that. It's like, well, there's no point in switching over to Xbox now. I'll just stick with this. And thankfully now we're finally starting to get some games that are crossplay. So
Yeah, I guess the longer we go, the more that happens. I mean, I really enjoyed the discussion between you and Korean for console exclusives, or
oh,
not necessarily console, but system exclusives.
hmm.
And that's aggravating, man. That's aggravating sometimes as an Xbox guy, because there aren't a ton of exclusives for Xbox. I recognize that, unless you're a really big Halo fan or something like that.
Forza,
Yeah,
Gears of War, yeah.
there's not a ton. I was really happy I had that free PlayStation 4 that came into my life, so I could play Final Fantasy and not have to wait the additional year to play it on
Oh,
Xbox. Because I loved it. It was amazing,
it was
But
great.
yeah, I just keep leaning on Xbox, and the Series X has been working great. It's not a humongous upgrade from the One X, but I can tell you. just Cyberpunk's the only game I have. I say have for it, even though it's a last gen game. I don't. I actually don't have a next gen game for it yet that I'm really interested in. I'm kind of waiting on a few,
Yeah.
but it runs great and everything is super fast on it, so I can't complain.
Excellent. Excellent. So what are you playing right now?
I'm finishing Cyberpunk. That probably will be done today if I had to guess, since I'm working from home. Uh, I did my obligatory 45 minutes to an hour of work this morning when I first woke up, and I was waiting for this, and I said, well, maybe after I'm done with the Mag podcast, that I'll go finish up that, because I think I'm on the very last mission now.
Oh, okay.
Um,
You mind telling us what you do for a living, or
yeah, I actually work for the city of Fredericksburg.
for? Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
like a government thing.
I work for the city, so uh, nice local government job.
Okay, so that makes. Do you think that's kind of conducive to gaming and kind of helps out, or?
It's I'll tell you offline what my job for the city is, but I will tell you this, uh, that it sure helps me forget about the crap I have to deal with in the city.
Okay.
So yes, in a way, it's actually a wonderful escape.
Okay. Excellent. 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 All right. So you are currently married, right? You mentioned that.
Yes,
Okay. No
yeah,
kids yet, or?
no kids, no.
All right. But your wife games.
No, not really. That was actually a short-lived thing. I think she just enjoyed playing WoW.
Oh, okay.
But no, otherwise no.
All right. So do you guys ever have to like? I mean, how do you work out the family balance between gaming and having time for family?
So right now, I'll speak for right now. You know, the time of COVID. I guess that's kind of the time everybody's been living in here for the past year. Uh, it's a little different because she's working from home now, so she's able to just take the back office. I'm here at the kitchen table. I come out and do my little bit of work, and then I'm basically on call. So my phone, if it rings, I pick it up and say, "What do you need?" Uh, so in between, I can sit on the couch and play Xbox. It's kind of great. um, Whereas she spends the majority of her time tied to a phone, back in the office. So it does kind of give me time to play during the weekdays that I'm home. I work from home like 2 days a week, and it gives me plenty of time to play and kind of get it out of my system. On the weekends when we spend our time together, I'm not really on the Xbox unless she leaves to go to town or something for a couple hours. Maybe I have time to kill between housework, stuff like that. So it's a pretty decent separation. It makes for pretty easy game time for me, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because everybody's got kind of a different dynamic in the way things work. Like,
Yeah, I listened to Steve with his kid. I was like, wow, I'm not really into kids, honestly. And fortunately, I think my partner and I share that.
oh, okay.
We're not really looking for children, and I'm thankful for a lot of reasons. But hey, video games.
Yeah. And then I mean, like in my case, my wife works mornings, I work evenings, so I have like the whole morning. She's not at home, so that gives me plenty of time. Korean's partner, she's basically like stay at home, so she's there all the time. So he sometimes finds it a little bit harder to get gaming in. So yeah, having that kind of your own time definitely it makes a huge difference. I think.
Yeah, and Korean, I saw your question about the beginning and end of Cyberpunk, and I don't really know how to feel. I get what the story is about. I kind of don't care. I'm not really intrigued by it, I guess. But what I will say is, toward the end of the game, I have found that game just got easier and easier. As you get more skills and you get more equipment, you blow everybody's heads off in one shot. And I'm playing on hard. I didn't play on very hard, but I'm playing on hard. So the game just got super easy at the end. I don't expect it to get any tougher with whatever the final boss may be either.
Yeah, okay. Now we were talking earlier about Cyberpunk, not you and me, but Korean and I, about how when CD Projekt Red made it, they said they were going to make it significantly shorter than The Witcher because a lot of people who played The Witcher felt that it was just a great game, but a little bit too long. So they said they were going to make this one shorter, but give it a lot more replay value, and so that you could play it multiple times. Now, do you think that that's something you'd want to go back and play it again and try some different paths, or you'd like, nah, 90 hours is good for me?
Yeah, no. But this is just a Ben thing. I don't replay games very much.
Oh, really?
Really. Yeah, really. I'll go back and play the ones that I love, and am usually falling back on a Super Nintendo game. I can't tell you how many times I've played through Secret of Mana. Love that game, you know. Um, but yeah, like Witcher. I got Witcher on sale. I think I told you guys before. I got it on sale. They had all the DLC crammed into one pack, whatever they call that pack, and I played through it once and didn't really pay much attention to the story. And I don't intend to ever pick that game up again. Not that I hated it. I just I had my fun. I got my achievements.
There you go. All right, excellent, excellent, excellent. I got a whole list of like questions in here, and that I was going through.
I'm glad you can help steer me in the right direction.
Yeah.
Spin us into oblivion otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, and you were talking about console wars. That was going to be my question because I'm a PlayStation guy, and I probably would say I'm on the fanboy spectrum somewhere. So,
I mean, I don't think Microsoft is end all be all of consoles, but I think they wedged themselves in as a firm competitor between Sega, Nintendo, and PlayStation. And then when Sega kind of went away from hardware and just became a software developer, you gotta, I don't know, man, you gotta respect their game, I guess.
Oh no, definitely.
And to be a competitor, and nobody saw that coming.
I mean, Sony did the same thing. The original PlayStation was supposed to be Sony had a deal with Nintendo, and they said, how about disc games? We can make them bigger. We can do better graphics. And Nintendo was like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And then later on, Nintendo's like, nah, we don't really want to do it. So they scrapped it. And Sony's like, well, we have the technology, and let's make our own. And then they ended up in entering the fray. And actually, that's another reason why I'm probably a PlayStation guy now, is because our original console was the Genesis, and I was very staunchly a Sega guy. I was like, no, Nintendo sucks, Sega's good. And then when Sega announced that they were not going, they got to the point that when Sega announced that they were getting out of the console market, I personally blamed Nintendo, and I'm like, I will never buy a Nintendo console, and I will never forgive Nintendo for this. And at the time, the only other alternative was PlayStation, so I was like, I'm going to go to PlayStation. But it was actually probably PlayStation that was more responsible for it than Nintendo was.
Okay, well, I see what you're coming from, actually, when you explain it that way, and you kind of clicked something to me when you said that. You actually made a really interesting point, because, Nintendo, Sega. First of all, I'm just going to say I loved the console wars when we were kids. I thought they were amazing.
It was fun.
The advertisements in like GamePro magazine, like Sega do and Nintendo don't, and stuff like that. Like
the Star Fox video where they like hook up, or they get like the guy with the Sony and the Sega logos to hook up like Mario to like jumper cables or something. It's just so ridiculous.
Coolest advertisements ever, and that stuff was a blast. But now, then when you get like the toxic fanboys online, they're kind of doing the same thing. They're having the console arguments, except they are incredibly toxic. There's no fun to it at all.
No.
Internet with somebody who has an opposing view in general is impossible, but especially when it comes to these consoles. But that was a blast back then, and it's kind of funny with since we're almost identical age. You kind of liken it to the Coke and Pepsi war. Coke, where did we fall? Where did we fall in it with our age range? Because Coke was always kind of aimed towards the older audience, and Pepsi was always the newer generation, the edgier generation. And that's kind of what Nintendo and Sega did. Nintendo was there for the people who wanted to have fun and a family experience, but Genesis was the spiky hair punk rock, we'll kick your ass type of in your face movement. And it's funny who fell where, because ultimately my brother, I told you he got the NES. I wound up with that NES, and he got himself a Sega CD with his own money since he was older, and that he always went Sega from there on.
Oh, interesting.
So we were kind of opposites.
Yeah, and then like you were saying, where back then, I was definitely a huge Sega fanboy, and it's like, oh, Sonic the Hedgehog's awesome, Mario sucks, blah 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 blah. But like secretly deep down, I loved Super Mario World, and I always wanted to go to like Steve's house and play Mario Paint or Mario World, or so it's like, yeah, Nintendo's terrible. Can I come over to your house? Yeah, so yeah. But yeah, when it's online, and you don't know the people personally, it's just like I can just attack you and I don't have to. So definitely, there's a very different dynamic going on there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but yeah, so you mentioned how you were talking with a friend the other day about how things have changed, and so you
Yeah,
wanted to talk a bit
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so the example that I was talking about specifically
Hmm.
was, and I'll go back to Super Nintendo because everything goes back to Super Nintendo for me. If I wanted to play a Super Nintendo game, I had to roll off the foot of my bed and reach down on the floor and stretch the console out towards me, and then flip the purple switch forward
Yes.
to turn it on, and then I had to stay within 8 feet of the console, because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how long the controller wire was. Um, and it never occurred to me ever in my juvenile life like it's going to get better than this, you
Yes.
know. And then the very first time I got an Xbox working at Funcoland, it still had a corded controller, but holy crap, I could press a power button on my controller now, and I could turn my console on from wherever I'm laying within cords distance,
Yeah.
And that one little thing to me was groundbreaking. Like that blew my mind as well that could happen. And now like I could sit at my kitchen table here, and I could turn my Xbox on by my phone. I could turn it on by my
Yes.
phone and download a game.
I can play my
Or,
PS5 from my phone. I can stream it to the phone.
oh, can you really?
Yeah, with remote play.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm not even familiar with that. I want to know more
I don't
about
know if
that. But
Xbox can do that, but yeah. No,
yeah, I
there's a
want.
remote play app, and all it'll do is this will be like a screen, and then I can just take a controller, sync it up, and I can just play this, and it'll just stream directly from the PS5. PS4 could do that too.
That's super cool. I didn't even know because I don't use my PlayStation very much.
Yeah. Your
It's
PS4 can do
a
that.
Bluetooth controller. It's just a Bluetooth connection to your phone.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically you'll have or you could just control it. It'll do it'll have a little digital display up here. Here,
Anywhere in the world. You could be back in
as long as you
Virginia.
have internet access, I'll do it right now. Hang on. But yeah, you keep talking. I'll show you what I mean.
Okay. But really, so the power button, it's innocuous. It's not anything that you or Korean or I really even think about probably right now. But just to be able to turn that on and lay back on your couch and never have to take your feet off the coffee table is just one of those amazing things to me. Digital, like on-demand gaming. I I just dug up a it was actually on Kotaku.com. I just dug up an article this week. It was some video dug up of people they took of themselves as kids going to Toys R Us to shop for video games, which I
Yes.
remember. And Adam, yeah, okay, you're saying yes. And Korean, I don't know if you ever had this experience or not. I know you said you were stateside. I'm not internationally savvy, so forgive me. But to go to Toys R Us, specifically Toys R Us, and go to the wall of video games where they had all the box art on paper, on printouts of paper in plastic sleeves. And if you wanted to know anything about that game, you didn't have Google. You didn't have a pocket in your phone with the sum of all human knowledge. You didn't have usually a gaming magazine. Maybe you did had a Nintendo Power that told you about it or something. But you had to go to the wall and flip up the little plastic sleeve and read the back of the box art to learn about the game. And I remember that, and I loved it. And I just that was my favorite thing to do. I'm sure my mom hated it, but I just went and I read video game box art to try to decide what game I wanted to buy with my money that I had saved up. Or my other alternative was go to the KB Toys bargain bin, like that
Yeah.
bargain bin, that wire dump bin out front of the store, and dig through games. And of course, cartridge-based games are expensive. They were they were expensive for their time,
Oh yeah.
and they're still. I mean, there's some the rare ones are still actually very expensive, but you think about the fact that CD-based games right now. I think you mentioned PlayStation up to 69.99 or is it 79.99?
69.99. Yeah.
69.99 for a game. I mean, 69.99 was the release. Was it no? Was it 49 or 59 was the release price for Super Mario World on Super Nintendo the
I
day
actually
of
looked
release.
all this stuff up for you. So on
Did
the
you?
Super Nintendo, games on the Genesis and Super Nintendo on average cost $49.99, but with inflation, that would be the equivalent of $104.28.
Like Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, that's so crazy to me. But you think I laugh at people who go, "Oh my god, I can't believe you spent $60 on a game." I spent $60 on a game in 1992. Like
yeah,
it was a big difference then. I had to stack a lot of wood on my grandma's porch to get that money.
yeah. No, the original that was the thing I was talking to Korean about it. I was saying, when I was little. Oh, and by the way, I got here. Can you see this? This is my PlayStation right now. So I'm
Holy
currently
crap!
logged in to my PS5. So yeah, so you can totally play from your phone. Um, I'm gonna
Wow.
log out of that. Yeah, no, it's a really nifty little
You
feature.
just blew my mind. In 2021, you just blew my mind with something else I didn't know existed.
Yeah, yeah, you can now you can stream from your phone. So you can I mean this is basically the equivalent of kind of what a Switch is supposed to do, right? But you can just use your phone and have that Switch kind of uh you know streaming it to your phone kind of thing. And now I don't know how to shut it off. Hang on.
I'm
I think I
impressed.
pressed this button.
But
I
you
don't
mentioned
use this
Switch,
feature
and
very
and I am while I am an Xbox gamer, I have a PlayStation. I actually have a Switch also.
Oh,
I
nice.
just I usually I know when consoles come out, I know I'm gonna wind up with all of them. I know I am. Maybe that makes me sound spoiled. I don't know.
No?
I'm gonna play a PS5 when they're on the shelf because there's gonna be exclusives I want to play.
Right.
And to me, it's worth it. Maybe if I lose my job and have to save money, obviously, PS5 is low on the list. But as long as I've got the income, I'm totally down with getting a PS5 to play whatever the next exclusive comes out. And same with the Switch. I bought a Switch as I think I'm going to say a lot of people. I won't say the majority of people. As a lot of people did, it was a Mario and Zelda machine, and it sort of is still for a lot of people. It's a
Oh
Mario and Zelda
yeah.
machine.
I mean
You know,
it's super famous for their first party games and then it's notorious for shovelware. It's like all
yes,
these
yes.
really horrible third party games, with the exception of maybe Shovel Knight and Shantae and like a few other things.
Actually,
But
Hollow Knight was the one I think that I really enjoyed. I had never played it when it was on Steam or anywhere else, and I got that on Switch. And super great game. But I'm a big fan of Metroidvania games.
ah, but
Yeah,
yeah. I was talking to Korean the other day, and I was because we had just had the show where we were in it, and we were talking about free games, and I was talking about how I just don't understand um, how Game Pass is supposed to be profitable for developers because there's just less money out there. But and then I've done research since. But after the fact, I looked up because you were talking about how things have changed, and I looked it up, and it said the original Nintendo $45 for a game, but $45 in 1985 is the equivalent of $108 in 2020. And I remember being a little kid, and we were like, "Let's get a new Genesis game," like let's get the next Sonic the Hedgehog. And back then, in 1990, that's the equivalent of $100 today for a game. And so I was like, oh, no wonder my parents were always so reluctant to buy new games, because they would say like they're so expensive. And now me being older, I'm like, games actually aren't that expensive. And then it's like, oh no, wait, but they were.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It's not it's not like a woe is me thing. I didn't grow up with a ton of money. And I mean, Dad was in the army, Mom was a civil servant, and uh, we used to eat a lot of scrambled eggs for dinner, because they were cheap.
Hmm.
Stuff like that. So when I was able to actually get like a video game for a birthday or a holiday or something like that, it was amazing to me. And that was frankly I think that's where I get my habit of putting 100 hours into a game.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't just going to beat the final boss and be like, cool, when's my next game? Because I may have had a calendar year before the next birthday came around, or Christmas or Easter or something like that. So I tried to pump as much as I possibly could out of those games.
Oh yeah, no, that I've thought about that too. Like we were playing, we when we used to play Sonic the Hedgehog, we'd play it, we'd beat it, we'd play it again, we'd beat it again, and it's like, there wasn't that much to it, but we played it and we were happy. And now, people are like, oh man, this game's only 20 hours, and
Oh
you know, and,
God,
I'm,
the drive crazy.
it's 20 hours, and so yeah, it's a good thing it costs $15, and it's like, whoa, like I used to play, we could beat Sonic in 2, and we would just play it again, over and over again.
Are we crotchety old men? Have we become crotchety old men now?
I think it's to an extent, yeah, I definitely have.
I,
You
I'm,
know,
I'm there with you, man.
I'll definitely get on forums on time from time to time and do the get off my lawn speech, and like, you guys don't know what it is. You can't appreciate these things. And I think that's one of the things too, is like now I see a lot of younger players and they talk about games, and like a game like I know a lot of younger, and I say younger, they're still probably pretty old right now, but they started on like Final Fantasy X with the PS2. And they'll talk about like, oh, Final Fantasy X was so great and all these other things. Final Fantasy VII sucks. Final Fantasy VII's overrated. All the characters are cliche and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you realize they're cliche because everybody copied them. They weren't cliche at the time. Like, they set the standard for the cliche. And so, you can't, and so it's kind of hard for people to, I think, sometimes appreciate these things and go back and see it because it's like,
they're not copies, they're archetypes.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm telling people like, you just don't get it because you had to be there. But
I will say this though, since you just made me think of it. I don't know if I'm gonna make any viewers of yours angry, but Final Fantasy VIII does suck.
I am that's my least favorite Final Fantasy as well as 8. I was not a fan of 8.
That one was never one I was a fan of.
8 was no, yeah. I don't know too many people that are fans of 8, except for recently I've started seeing people that are like, "Oh yeah, 8 was really good." And I'm like, "How old are you? Like, you clearly weren't here when we had, better games." But, I mean, it had some interesting. I will say of Final Fantasy VIII, I think is probably actually has my favorite soundtrack. So, but yeah, the gameplay wasn't that good.
It's one that I know I played. I know I owned. Actually, it might still be in my box downstairs. But I can't remember if I finished it, and it's definitely another one I'll pick up again.
I definitely finished it with the Game Shark.
With the Game Shark? A PlayStation 1 Game Shark?
Yeah.
That would have plugged into the memory card slot, right?
No, it plugged into the back.
Oh, the serial port in the back of the PlayStation.
Yeah. It plugged into the back. I was thinking about that too. We don't have cheats like that. A lot of games now, I'll look at them, and I used to go on like Game FAQs, Game FAQs all the time, and I would look up, and I would always go to cheats, and like I'd go to something like Skyrim, and it's like, if you put an ebony arrow into the guy's inventory, he'll automatically equip whatever the arrow is the best, and he'll shoot it into the wall repeatedly, and you can just collect infinite arrows that way. And so I'd look up the cheats and the glitches and stuff like that, and nowadays I'll go there and out of curiosity, I'll go to like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or something. I'll go to it and I'm like, okay, let's look at the cheats. There's no cheat section anymore. Like a lot of these newer games don't have these, or like a lot of games don't have cheat codes or things like that. You can't. I guess everybody's modding.
On the internet, I read sometimes walkthroughs for if I get stuck someplace or if I just want to go find something without the hassle, and like IGN. Big business for IGN, man. They do tons of walkthroughs, and I mean, there's a plethora of other websites, but somebody's getting paid to type that, and what a job, right? Like, I don't know where that information's coming from. I don't know if they're mining it from some other source and regurgitating it, or if there's literally a person with a controller sitting there and, like you said, shoot this arrow into this wall 14 times, or what did I just see? I know you're playing Valhalla.
Yeah.
That's something about like beating a pile of rocks.
Yeah. You beat I haven't gotten it yet, but yeah, you smack on a pile of rocks and then you save and then load again, and eventually the pile of rocks will disappear and you can pick up a bow.
So is this data mining from somewhere? Or
I think that one was data mining off of because I think people figured out that there were these weapons in the game, but they weren't sure how to access them.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Yeah. So Korean here is saying that maybe European people liked Final Fantasy VIII, like Antoine, the guy he interviewed last week. But I remember Antoine said he liked Final Fantasy X, not 8. So I don't know. Maybe he didn't like 8. 8 was pretty unpopular at the time.
I don't know. I think Final Fantasy VIII, at the risk of maybe offending some people, if I remember, kind of had a little more of an emo audience. That
annoyed me so much. Like Final Fantasy, like Cloud was kind of the dark tough hero, and Squall was this brooding emo teen. And then in Kingdom Hearts, they 180'd their two personalities, and then And everything after that, everyone's like, "Oh, Cloud's this emo guy," and I'm like, "No, that's Squall. They swapped their characters." And like even in like yeah, and now Squall's always kind of like this like natural born leader, and he's got kind of this commanding presence in like Kingdom Hearts, and I'm like, no, they swapped the characters, and that annoyed me to no end. I was like, no, that's not Cloud, that's Squall, and they switched him. So
Well, Square kept Cloud's personality quiet, brooding, and tough for Urgheist.
very
Remember the
long
Urgheist
time.
fighting game for PlayStation 1?
I had
they
that.
did keep his personality correct in that, but like you said, there was at some point there was a brain swap that nobody was privy to until Kingdom Hearts popped up.
I think Kingdom Hearts was the one that did it. I
Yeah.
think Kingdom Hearts was the one that did it. And then actually, that's one thing that I did like about the new remake was they did go back to kind of that old Cloud, and it's like, no, he's not brooding, you know. He's
Hey, I wanna tell this kind of anecdote, I guess, because it ties into what we were talking about here with how gaming has changed. But I'll tell you kind of a funny story. So I received the PlayStation One as a gift. Um, I forget the holiday, but when it first came out or shortly after, and I got the Final Fantasy VII 3-disc box with it because that's the only game I wanted. It was my Final Fantasy machine, and to this day, I know. I'm
it's
sorry.
very formulative to us.
but
You don't
but
understand.
this is why it's funny. So I think it was my mom gave me the PlayStation, and neither of us knew about memory cards.
Oh
What
yeah.
the hell is a memory card? Cartridges save my games. I just want to play Final Fantasy. So um, I got it on that holiday. We weren't able to actually get back into Fredericksburg again to buy a memory card at Toys R Us for I think a week to 10 days because of the holiday that was surrounding. I've played the first between 6 to 8 hours of Final Fantasy VII. I know 40 times, where then I had to turn the console off and I'd lose all my save. So I could probably recite the script of Final Fantasy VII, at least the first 8 hours, from memory, from having to play it and hear it so many times before I was able to actually get a memory card and progress past that. And the 80 hours of game that went past that, I was like, holy crap! If I'd have known then what I knew now. but thinking and that kind of ties into these consoles now have 500 1 terabyte drives that you're saving full games on, all your saves. I mean, hell, when I transferred my account over from the One X to the Series X, all my game saves came with it. I didn't even have to worry about any of that either, which was perfect. It's just exactly what a friendly user experience is nowadays, I guess.
Right. You have the cloud saves and everything, and then also, shoot, they have the sleep. They can put it to sleep now.
Yeah.
That I do that all the time, where I'm just like, okay, just put it to sleep, and then when I turn it back on, I'll just resume wherever I was, and that was a huge deal too, because I remember, I think it was, I don't remember if the PlayStation 3 could do it or not. I don't think the PlayStation 3 could, or maybe it only could later. But I remember there was a game that I was playing, and the game actually had set save points, kind of like in the old school kind of way, like maybe it was a Resident Evil or something. And it was like, oh wait, I can actually pause this. Like I don't have to like lose my last 15 minutes. And in a way, I kind of felt like, because at the time, I remember I would, because when we were little, we're like, oh, come on, Mom, I need to get to save point. Give me another 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then at that, at that point, I realized that I could do that. And then I think I even mentioned how cool it was to my wife. And she's like, oh, so now you can never use that excuse with me anymore. You can just, put it to sleep mode. And I was like, oh, no, have I made a mistake? But yeah, it's like, yeah, you can just turn it off and then resume. You don't have to worry about saving it anymore.
Yeah, that's definitely the most common way to power off for me with the Xbox. I mean, ever since the first Xbox One, I guess, because I don't think the 360 had that feature. But ever since the first Xbox One, so if I'm playing and somebody came into the room and said, "Hey, we got to do something," or "We got to go," or "House is on fire," or whatever, just boom, sleep, gone.
Yeah, and it updates on its own and everything, and
Yeah.
so okay, so this is a question that we had when we were doing the news 2 weeks ago. One of the news was about the power and how the instant on feature on the Xbox drains a lot of power. Is that different from a sleep feature? Or is that the sleep feature?
So, oh, okay, you talk about instant on.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
Yeah, instant on is it's a suspension basically. You're just suspending your progress where you're at, and it's basically leaving the Xbox kind of on in a dormant state, uh, while you're away doing whatever. So when you come back and press the power button again, it's exactly what we were just talking about. It just boom
Okay.
on whatever space you were at. You know, it starts to your dashboard, but as soon as you hit the game again, you're exactly where you were at, whether you saved or not.
Oh, okay.
And then the deep sleep is basically off. You
So
know,
there's a deep sleep. Okay. Because
yeah,
usually I'm used to hearing it as sleep mode or hibernate mode, and so when I heard this instant on thing, I was like, oh, is this a different feature? Is it so it still has sleep mode and this instant on thing, or is there something different? So that is the sleep mode then.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So
If
as
I'm
you,
saying that, I think so.
oh, okay. So as you've gotten older, have you noticed your tastes in games have changed a bit, or pretty much
Actually,
been
yeah,
consistent?
yeah, for sure. I definitely play like I'm always going to be a fan of the JRPG. Uh,
Yeah,
as we've I think discussed during Fantasy Cast.
fantasy cast. Yeah.
Um, I'm always going to be a fan, and you know, if another big title comes out that I really enjoy, I'll play it without a doubt. But I'm not really seeking out new IPs, I guess, for JRPGs. I do find that with a shorter, I guess, shorter time to play, and frankly, a shorter attention span. I mean, I've joked about my attention deficit disorder several times, but it's always going to be there. I play a lot more FPS than I used to.
Okay.
I mean, GoldenEye was always great. You know, who didn't like GoldenEye? But I play a lot more FPS, and really even better if it's kind of like Cyberpunk or a Fallout. If it's a FPS RPG, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
those are great. When I was still PC gaming, I mean that was probably my last gaming rig probably died. I mean, let's see, me and her have been together for 10 years, so my gaming rig probably died about 8 to 7 years ago. I was playing a ton of Diablo
Oh,
or
okay.
things like and MMOs. But yeah, right now, I think if I'm going to pick up a game and play it, it's probably going to be an FPS, a platformer, something action based. Not a lot of strategy or simulation.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I noticed when I was little, like I said, I played a lot of platformers. And
Yeah.
then when I was introduced to RPGs, I switched mostly over to JRPGs. And I didn't play too many Western RPGs with the exception of maybe Ultima, the Ultima series.
Mm.
But then when, after I played Oblivion, I started playing a lot more Western RPGs and a lot more action RPGs now. I've noticed like Horizon Zero Dawn kind of things or Nier Automata, that kind of like, you know, that kind of action RPGs. That I've noticed that that's probably the kind of game that I play the most now. I guess Valhalla kind of falls into that category as well. Yeah, the line between RPG and a non RPG is getting so blurred these
It
days.
is. It
So
really is. Yeah. So I've heard you talk about Valhalla, and I'm not really an AC fan. I think I talked to Krian about this during another show. Well, maybe one of his like play videos. I'm not. I'm just not really an AC fan. I know I played the first one. I know I beat the first one because it was new, you know. But so I'm a big fan of like historical pirate stuff. They'll just say stuff. And I tried to play
Black
Black Flag.
Flag.
I tried to play Black Flag, thinking I said, you know what? If there's an AC game I can get into, this is going to be it, and it wasn't. So I realized at that point, there's no need for me to waste. And I played that on Steam actually. I said, there's just not really any reason for me to waste money on AC games anymore.
I think I got mine free on PlayStation Plus or something.
You
I
can't beat
remember.
free.
No, no, you can't beat that. Yeah. Yeah. And I also, when I was little, my brother and I, we used to play sports games all the time, and now I just can't play sports games. I don't know. Like if somebody's like, let's play like NBA K, I'm like, nah, you play. I'll be fine over
Yeah,
here.
I've never been able to get into a sports game. I would play like on NES. I'd play Blades of Steel, or Tecmo Bowl.
Blades of Steel. I remember Tecmo. We played
Yeah.
Madden '94.
Uh, so when I worked at Funco Land, I am the I'm gonna say self-proclaimed, but I earned that title, Virtua Tennis Champ on Dreamcast. I always left a Dreamcast hooked up in the store, and any customer that wanted to play me, I would smash into the floor on Virtua Tennis. I don't know why. I just really liked Virtua Tennis, but otherwise, that was never big into sports games at all.
All right. So what about I have this question here. It's so vague. It says, "What do you think about the direction games have been moving in?" I know, like we talked about in the like the well, not the political prerogative one, but to an extent that one, but then also the inclusivity. Do you think that games are kind of and then we're seeing like games are getting a lot more like graphic and stuff like that. Like for instance, people are going more for those realistic graphics, and they're going more, like we said, the RPGs used to be their own thing. Now everything has to have a story element to it. Everything has to have like tech trees, and everything has to be, like I think some of the like first person shooters now you have like you can unlock tech trees and stuff like that. So I mean, do you think that's kind of a good thing, or do you think maybe things are kind of becoming a little too homogenized for your taste, or?
No, I'm actually. I guess I'm simplifying your question too much, and you
No,
can
it's
kind of
fine. Interpret it as you
but,
wish.
well, I love tech trees. I think they're
I do too.
I think they're wonderful. I think they're wonderful. I'm Cyberpunk is obviously the most recent example. I think their tech trees are a little weak because, frankly, I have a surplus of skill points in that game right now that I haven't spent because I don't care. Like I have all the skills I want, and so I've got all these extra skill points, and I'm like, I don't really care about that. I've got my path. But generally speaking, I think adding something like that to a game really deepens it, and I think it gives the player character, or just the player, I should say, maybe a little more feeling of ownership.
No, I can
I
agree with
don't
that.
I don't think you can go wrong with that feeling of ownership. I think you're really just you're kind of generating more of a fan base and more of a loyalty from your audience by doing that.
You're actually playing a role. You are role playing.
I used to joke about role playing all the time, and I'm like, every game's a role playing game. You can go play Gran Turismo. You're playing the role of that driver.
True, true.
You don't get to put stats into your gas pedal or your your bladder, or anything like that. But you are playing the role.
Yeah. So do you have like a favorite system in terms of tech trees, or one that you really, really like?
Gosh, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Actually,
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking like,
sad.
okay, for me, I would say I really enjoyed Nier Automata. Did you play that one?
I did. I actually didn't like that game very
You
much.
didn't like it? Oh no. But I like the system with the chips. So you can actually like program yourself in a way, and you can like allocate and stuff like that. I liked that.
So my problem with that game, and you can shake your head at me. Most people would for this, and that's nitpicky on my part. I think that game, I think that game relied more on art and style than substance and control.
Fair enough.
That's just my opinion. I played it. I know there's supposed to be like a billion different endings and crap like that. I played through it.
They're goofy. Most of them are like goofy endings, or like you ate a fish and died. The end.
I played through it once. I don't even remember what ending I got. I was like, nah, this is cool. Um, and that was kind of the end of it. I didn't really like it. Now, on the other hand, you mentioned Horizon with it, and I loved Horizon. I thought Horizon was great. But I'm also going to liken Horizon a bit to Far Cry because it has the typical climb a tower, unveil the map, do all the stuff where you clear the map, and I love that. I love to be able to say, okay, here's my new chunk. This is my new AO. Let me go do all the little things on the map in that AO, and then I'll clear the next chunk and do that. And I'm a huge fan of that. But just going back real quick, and Korean, roll your eyes at me, man. The Esper system for Final Fantasy III is easily the best, the best progression system I could think because you have to actually use the Espers and level them up in order to get their abilities. So
Better than Materia?
Huh?
Better than Materia?
Yeah, it's better than Materia. Yeah, it's better than Materia, man.
That's gonna be a hard disagree. That's gonna be a hard disagree for me. I did like the Esper thing, but the thing was, is I didn't. What I didn't like was it on it was So again, our friend Steve found a way to game the system, and he would put, I think it was Bahamut on Terra, and then because when you had Bahamut on somebody, it would boost their strength every time they leveled up. So he would just put it on Terra, level her up, and then he would give her the Genji gloves, which allow her to attack or hold.
There's double attacks, right?
Yeah. She could double attack, and then she had something where she could equip two weapons, and then she had like the attack 4 times. So she would attack 4 times with one weapon and then attack 4 times with the other weapon. So it was 8 attacks at 9999 damage, and he could one shot the final boss. And I was like, that's a brilliant system. That's amazing. But that means that Terra's the only person in the game who ever learns Flare, and she never learns any other spell. because she's equipped to Bahamut the whole time. So nobody else will ever learn Flare, and she will never learn any healing spells or anything else. So
Well,
maybe it was Celestia that he did it with. But yeah, I remember he would do that, and it would just like break the game. It was.
I know what's going to happen. We're going to hang up from this, and I'm going to go, crap, that's the skill tree I should have brought up, and I know I'm going to do it, but I can't think of another example. But yeah, I really like skill trees. I think they're
No, I agree, and I agree that I do feel like it really fleshes out the character. That in a way, that's actually one thing that I didn't like about Fallout 4. Not the tech tree, but the fact that they had a voiced protagonist. Because I was like, no, the silent protagonist, I can put the voice in my own head. Now I'm playing as somebody else. I'm not playing as my. It's not a fursona, but like my alternative self.
I'm gonna say this too. A game, let's say a game like Doom. I mean, it's a simple FPS game. There's no skill trees and no nothing. But then you get to these 2 Doom remakes that they made. Was it 2016 and 2019?
Something like that. Yeah.
The Doom remakes. Those games are really fun. They're really fun. They're really fast paced. And there's no experience points or anything in them. But they actually did something very smart. And I don't know if you've had the pleasure of playing them or not. But they actually made it a little bit of a skill tree on each of your guns. Because it was basically like if you perform 10 of this ridiculous type of kill with this gun, then you'll get the upgrade to that gun. And that's a little bit. There was a little bit of a skill tree element to that, and every gun had different additions that you could find through exploration in the game. So maybe you could turn your shot. I don't remember. I'm making stuff up right now, but you could turn your shotgun into a rocket launcher if you found this piece or if you spent this skill point on it. And really, the trees were only forks. They weren't necessarily trees. You picked one or the other. But even that, in such a simple, fast-paced game, gave me a little bit of like a encouragement to customize my character and to suit my play style. Because I'd rather not sit back and snipe. I'd rather run into a room and shotgun everything if I had the option. I'm a messy player.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one thing. Playing Horizon Zero Dawn, loved the game, but the tree for me was one of the things that I wasn't super keen on because it really was just unlocking nodes. And I was like, at the end, I'm going to unlock everything. So it's just kind of like, in the mid game, you're kind of a personalized character, but at the beginning and at the end, you're the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like in the middle, you've kind of picked out what you wanted, but by the end, everybody has everything. So.
Actually, you said that makes a really good point, and I won't beleaguer the point very much, but actually, and that's kind of where I'm at with Cyberpunk, and a lot of these more modern skill tree games, I guess, is towards the last third of the game. You're the same as everybody else. You're all powerful, and you can pretty much squash everybody in your fist.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been talking for a little over an hour here, so that's usually about how long a show goes. If you had fun, we'd love to invite you over another time. But
everything you need.
Yeah. But then also, I figured this might be interesting. So we've pretty much been talking about games, everything on this show, but I know that living in Taiwan, that's actually something that probably a few people are kind of curious. So I was kind of curious if you had any questions or anything that you would like, that you've been kind of wondering, like, oh, what's life like in Taiwan?
Gosh,
that we could answer for you.
Actually, that's super intuitive that you would ask that, because I'm curious about a lot of things, but I haven't caught up with you in a long time.
No, yeah, obviously.
And I know I think there are some definite cultural differences between the U.S. and Taiwan, and I know that there's probably a lot of. I think there are probably still political things going on with like Taiwan and China and things like that.
Oh, certainly.
That I know just enough to be dangerous about, if I'm saying it, So, actually, it feels like a minefield to me to ask, if I'm being dead honest about that.
No. I love. They say never discuss religion and politics in polite company, and I'm pretty sure this is pretty impolite company, so we should be safe.
Yeah. No. I if I'm being honest, I would love to hear pretty much anything. I don't want to be too personal to Adam, but like what drew you to Taiwan?
I'm an open
what
book.
kept you to Taiwan? and just kind of, what life, I guess, aspects are different. What do you enjoy better? What do you miss more, maybe, about being in back in North America or in the States? Things like that. And actually, the one question I will ask you, and this is a little personal. Naturally, I don't want to know where you live. I don't need your address. But do you live in like a rural area, or is it a city scape that you
It's
live in?
definitely
Or
a city. We're the third largest city on the island.
oh, okay.
So we live in Kaohsiung. Yeah, so the to give you my little bit of journey. So like I said before when we were talking about the butterfly effect, right? I wanted to study computer science so I could get into game development. Well, that was back in 2000, graduated in 2006. Back in 2006, iPhone didn't exist, so app development wasn't really a thing. And we'd kind of just come off of the dot-com bubble. So you had a lot of programmers out there, and they were all kind of competing for the same thing. So it was a little bit tough finding a job. I looked for about 9 months, and then my grandfather died. My dad's dad died, and we went to that funeral. And then 3 weeks later, my mom's dad died. So then we
Oh,
went back to the other funeral. And at my mother's father's funeral, my cousin was like, "Oh, hey, I heard that you haven't found a job yet." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm still looking." And he said, "Well, I taught English in Taiwan for 2 years. Maybe you should give it a shot." And I was like, "All right, maybe, sure, why not?" And back then, me, I was a huge, I guess the word for it nowadays is weeb, but, but so I really wanted to go to Japan. I thought that was really, really cool. My mom was like, no, my mom was like, I have some rules. You can't go to South Korea. I'm too worried about North Korea. You can't go to South Korea. It's too dangerous. Yeah. Well, back then, Taiwan and China, I guess, weren't quite at the situation that they are now. But, she was like, South Korea, I'd worry about you too much. So no South Korea. So I was looking into it, and that basically limited it to Thailand, Taiwan, and Japan were like the big three. I mean, China is pretty big too, but I think China probably was. There was some problems with China even back then. So the big three were Thailand, Taiwan, and Japan. And I was really interested in going to Japan, but when I looked at most of the programs said like, you can renew for 2 years and then after that get out of the country. So Japan was, we want people to come over, but we don't want them to stay. And they're still very much kind of xenophobic in that way, Japan, compared to a lot of other countries. So in that sense, I was like, well, if I like it and I want to stay, that could be a problem. So then that kind of narrowed it down to, Taiwan and Thailand. And then so I submitted some resumes, I think 5. And the next morning I get somebody in there like, hey, we want to do an interview. Can you do it tonight? And then I did the interview that night. And then the next morning they were like, I found a school. Do you want to come to Taiwan? I found a place for you to teach. And so like literally within like 72 hours, I went from nothing to having a job. So that's why I came to Taiwan. So then I came here, and I'll be honest, when I first came over, I was thinking, rice patties and, conical hats and stuff. But,
sure.
and I think in a way I was confusing Taiwan and Thailand, and a lot of people do that. So, but yeah, so I came over here, and it's it's really not that. It's not as different as I was expecting. It's actually quite similar to the States and whatnot. And one of the weirdest things was when I got off the plane and I got in the airport and my luggage hadn't arrived yet or was somewhere else or whatever. So I went to the counter. There was a girl there. She's around our age or so. So she's around mid-20s at the time, early to mid-20s. And she's like, where are you from? And I'm like, America. And she's like, oh, America, so good. And I'm like,
Really?
yeah, because I'm always like, everyone, whenever you travel, always tell people you're Canadian. Never tell people you're American. But the fact that, people in Taiwan, they really, really like America. They're really, because the Republic of China was an ally of the U.S. in World War II. And the U.S. still has very strong ties with Taiwan. So, yeah, Taiwan actually sees the U.S. quite favorably than what you would see in, say, some place like maybe Europe or something like that. So, so that's why I came. And then, I started working here and really, really enjoyed it. Met my wife and settled down. And that's pretty much why I've been here for 14 years. As far as
14
things that are, yeah, 14 years. As far as things that are better, we definitely have better healthcare. We have some of the best healthcare in the world. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little nick on my thumb there. I got bit by my cat. So I got
Oh,
bit. Yeah, I was being dumb. So she bit me because I wasn't paying attention. It wasn't her fault. So she bit me, and I went to the hospital, and I'm like, okay, I know that you're supposed to get like a tetanus shot when you get an animal bite, right? So I went to the hospital, got the tetanus shot, got the blood work done, got the X-ray, got all my medication, and the total cost. I went in through the emergency room, and the total cost was about maybe it was less than $30 US.
oh, okay. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. So that part's definitely better.
You said
Um,
that's a hospital, not just like a standalone clinic or anything?
no, this is like a regular hospital.
Yeah,
I
wow.
just went in through the
That's
emergency room. Yeah. So I mean, and there's good and there's bad sides to the medical industry and whatnot. But also, as far as what's really really good, uh, the lifestyle here is relatively laid back, despite being a big city, and life is super cheap. I mean, I make U.S. wise probably close to maybe 25,000 U.S. a year, and I save more here than I would making 60,000 in like the tech industry in the States if I moved to like
oh,
California or something like that.
okay.
So I make far less, but I end up saving quite a bit more. Um, this is my dinner. I haven't finished it yet, but I got this for this is like a whole bowl of fried rice, and that cost me 35 NT, which is about a buck 25, like a buck 10. So you can get a meal for like a dollar 10. So it's super cheap.
Well, speaking of meals, did you find that your tastes changed once you moved to Taiwan?
Uh, that's a funny story actually. So people, this is one thing that's it's kind of funny. So a lot of people talk about how unhealthy the American diet is, and yes, it is if you're constantly eating out. But if you're cooking at home, it's actually not that bad, right? I mean, I remember growing up. You know, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She cooked dinner every night. I was super skinny when I was a kid, right? We were relatively healthy. In
I remember
Taiwan, when
all
I
of your
first
brothers and sisters were pretty skinny.
yeah. So in Taiwan, when I first came, you know, a lot of people are really thin. Now I'm starting to see people getting bigger and bigger as like more like fast food is becoming more of a thing. But actually, in America, you get a lot of like trans fats and stuff like that. In Taiwan, you don't get so many fats, so you get a lot of skinny people. But there's a lot of salt, tons of salt and tons of oil, to the point where I was living in Taiwan, and after I think my first year, a year and a half, I ended up getting gout because my kidneys couldn't process the amount of salt I was eating.
Interesting.
So I had to swap back to a semi-Western diet. So now I typically eat I'll eat a Taiwanese breakfast, but I'll eat a Western lunch, and then I'll kind of mix up dinner between a Western dinner or a Taiwanese dinner. So
Well,
I eat about a 50-50 diet.
I always look forward to the Facebook pictures of you and your wife's, the big spreads when you guys are having special dinners or special meals.
It's
I
too
always
much.
enjoy seeing those personally.
I cannot finish it. We'll go someplace and it'll be like, oh man, I'm too full, too full. Everything here comes in huge portions. But yeah, the things I miss are things like pizza pockets and General Tso's chicken. And the weather. It's a bit too hot for me here. It's super hot, super humid. So
My mom traveled to Taiwan dozens of times through her civil service, so she had mentioned the heat there as well through her time of traveling. But she was
yeah,
traveling through the 80s and 90s, typically.
yeah. It gets really humid, and it's really funny because everyone drives scooters, or most people drive scooters. At least here in Kaohsiung. Up north, they take. I think there's more public transportation, but here we drive scooters. So you'll be walking around and you're just like dripping sweat, and then you get on your scooter and you drive, and because now you're driving at like 30 miles an hour equivalent, that's like a 30-mile an hour wind chill. You're freezing when you're driving because like all that is just stripping the heat off of you, and you're like, oh, and then you get off of it again, and then you just start sweating immediately, and it's just like, oh god. So it's a weird dynamic.
I'm super fascinated by all of it. Like I said, I I know it's a minefield for some of the maybe more political issues and things of that nature, but I love hearing about it.
Yeah, no. I'd maybe we'll do. Korean and I can do an AMA episode someday, and people can just come in and type out some questions, and we can just answer them. And so that might
It
be.
sounds like a good idea. I would
Yeah,
love to know more about Korean one day too. So,
he's awesome.
maybe maybe one day I can try to slip into a player three role or something and just
Yeah. No, I mean that was the thing. Is I mean this is called player three. Press start, and there's only ever two players. Because like Korean's not here, but part of that is because of we're working out with bandwidth issues, and having three people on a call can be a little bit much. So we're trying to limit it to two right now, just to make sure we can make everything work. So
no, it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
But I'm loving working with you guys and listening to you. And I mean, typically you're when you're doing your discussions, you're kind of my bedtime routine, I guess, more than anything else. And that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch an episode of Mag before I go to sleep here. And uh, I love getting in on the conversations. Like I said, I try not to suck all the oxygen out of the room, but I love what you guys got to say, and I think you're killing it.
yeah, we're getting killed by a bot here in the chat too.
I pop up.
So, all right. Well, I think that's probably we're a little bit long here, an hour and 15 minutes. All right. So yeah, we're gonna call it a night for tonight, and yeah, well, we'd love to have you back on the show sometime if you'd like to come back.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. I had a great time.
All right. Well, thanks for coming then. All right, guys. So we're gonna sign off, and you want to say goodbye to everybody, or?
Yeah. Goodbye, world. Thanks for listening.
All right. So we're gonna see you all guys later. You all guys. We're gonna see all you guys later. And yeah, make sure you check out the show on Tuesday, and we're gonna talk about some more free to play stuff and whatnot. And yeah, we'll go from there. So thanks for coming, Ben, and thanks for coming, everybody. And we'll see you all soon.